What would you do if one day, without warning, the world's most visionary man vanished, and no one was allowed to speak his name? Would you stay silent, or fight against the darkness, even if it meant standing alone? This story might just spark a new beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. We love seeing how far this community reaches. Also, let me know in the comments, what's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Emily Carter had broken some of the biggest stories in America: political scandals, medical fraud rings, corporate crimes hidden behind polished logos and smiling CEOs. Her voice carried weight, her pen cut deeper than most swords. But today her hands trembled, because today she wasn't covering a scandal. She was about to walk into one. The man's name was Julian Croft. You might not know that name. In fact, if you're under 20, you've probably never heard it. But just a few years ago, Croft was everywhere. He was the architect of our digital age, the man who envisioned a truly connected world, not through screens but through shared consciousness. His company, Nexus, wasn't just a tech giant. It was a promise of a better future. Then, one Tuesday morning, Julian Croft disappeared. And a day later, so did his name. It started subtly. News articles were scrubbed from the internet. Video interviews vanished from archives. His books were pulled from shelves. Then came the Sanctity of Information Act, a vaguely worded law passed in a rush, ostensibly to combat misinformation. In reality, it made mentioning Julian Croft's name a federal offense. The world, it seemed, had collectively agreed to forget its greatest innovator. But Emily Carter never forgot. For 3 years, she watched in silent horror as the world moved on. Nexus, now run by a board of faceless executives, morphed from a beacon of hope into a tool of unprecedented control. Their new Harmony system, an evolution of Croft's original dream, monitored everything, from public sentiment to private conversations, all under the guise of maintaining social stability. Dissent was quietly erased. Protests never gained traction. Society had become placid, orderly, and hollow. The silence was deafening, and Emily knew it was the sound of a gilded cage being locked. The package arrived on a rainy Thursday morning. No return address, just a simple brown box on her doorstep. Inside, nestled in foam, was a single object: an old, beautifully crafted fountain pen. It was an antique sterling silver, with intricate engravings of constellations. There was no note, but Emily knew instantly who it was from. It was a replica of the pen Julian Croft had used in his last public address, a speech where he'd famously said, "A single, honest word can rewrite the future." Tucked inside the pen's cap was a tiny memory stick, no bigger than her fingernail. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. For 3 years she had been waiting for a sign, a crack in the wall of silence. Plugging the drive into a secure offline laptop, she found a single encrypted file. It took her the better part of the day to break the code, a series of riddles based on Croft's old speeches and papers. When the file finally opened, it revealed a short, distorted video clip. It was Croft. He looked older, gaunt, his face etched with a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. He was in a stark, white room, the only feature a small, barred window. His voice was a hoarse whisper, the audio crackling with interference. "Emily," he said, his eyes finding the hidden camera. "If you're seeing this, it means I failed. But it doesn't mean the fight is over. They didn't just take my freedom. They stole my work. They twisted it. Harmony isn't unity. It's suppression. They're not preventing chaos, they're preventing progress. The kill switch. It's in the heart of the system. The source code. Find the Orion's belt sequence. It's the key. Don't trust a Nexus. Don't trust anyone." The video cut out, replaced by static. Orion's belt. The phrase echoed in her mind. It wasn't just a constellation. It was the name of a private project Croft had been working on, a failsafe he designed to dismantle his own creation if it ever fell into the wrong hands. The government and Nexus had claimed the project was a myth, a conspiracy theory, but Croft's message confirmed it was real, and he had just handed her the map. Emily knew what she had to do. This was bigger than a story. It was a rescue mission, not just for Julian Croft, but for the very soul of society. Publishing this would be impossible. The Sanctity Act would have her arrested before the article even went live. The government's digital watchdogs would scrub it from existence in seconds. No, she couldn't just report on this. She had to act. She had to find the source code and activate the kill switch herself. Her first stop was Leo Vance, Croft's former chief of security. After Croft's disappearance, Leo had been publicly disgraced, blamed for the security lapse, and had vanished from the public eye. Emily found him running a small, dusty bookstore in a forgotten corner of the city, a ghost haunted by his past. He was wary, his eyes scanning every shadow. "Why are you here, Carter?" he rasped, not looking up from a leather-bound book. Emily slid the silver pen across the counter. Leo's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. He picked it up, his calloused fingers tracing the familiar constellations. "He's alive," Emily said, her voice low. "He needs our help." Leo listened, his face a mask of stone as Emily recounted the message. When she finished, he was silent for a long time. "They'll kill you," he said flatly. "They have eyes and ears everywhere. The moment you access anything related to Nexus, they'll know." "Then we have to be smarter than them," Emily countered. "You know their systems, Leo. You helped build them. You know their weaknesses." A flicker of the old fire returned to his eyes. The old Nexus infrastructure. Croft built backdoors into everything. Redundancies. Failsafes. The new board thinks they sealed them all. They're arrogant. They didn't count on him leaving a key with the one person they couldn't control. He looked at Emily. "This Orion's Belt. It's not just a line of code. It was a place. A secret server farm. Completely off-grid. Croft called it the library. It holds the original untainted source code for all his projects. If we can get to it, we can bypass the Harmony network entirely." The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. The library was located beneath the new Nexus Tower, the most secure building on the planet. To get in, they would need to bypass layers of biometric scanners, AI-driven security drones, and a human guard force that was more like a private army. They needed a team. Leo made a call. An hour later, they were joined by Anya Sharma, a legendary hacker who went by the alias Nyx. She had been a vocal critic of Nexus before the Sanctity Act forced her underground. Anya was a whirlwind of nervous energy and brilliant code. She could dance through firewalls like they were made of smoke. "Infiltrate the Nexus Tower?" Anya scoffed, pacing the small room. "You're insane, I love it." With a flurry of keystrokes, she brought up a holographic blueprint of the tower. "Their security is a fortress, but every fortress has a flaw. Croft designed the original network. He was paranoid about centralization. The system's core has a physical maintenance duct, an old fiber optic channel they don't use anymore. It's a blind spot. If we can get to it, I can jack in and give us a window." The plan was set. Leo would handle physical infiltration, using his old security credentials and knowledge of guard rotations. Anya would run digital interference, creating diversions and opening doors from a remote van. And Emily was the key. The final lock on the Orion's Belt server required a voice command. But not just any voice. It had to be someone Croft trusted, speaking a specific passphrase he had shared with her during an interview years ago, a phrase she had thought was just an off-the-cuff philosophical remark. The brightest stars cast the longest shadows. The night of the infiltration was a blur of adrenaline and fear. As Leo navigated them through sterile, silent corridors, Emily's mind raced. Was she a journalist anymore? Or something else? A revolutionary? A criminal? The line had blurred, and all that mattered was the truth. They reached the maintenance duct. Anya's voice crackled in their earpieces. "I'm in. You've got 5 minutes before the system purges my intrusion and they send the cavalry. Go, go, go." The server room was like a cathedral to technology. Cold, silent, with humming towers of black metal reaching into the darkness. In the center was a single isolated server rack, glowing with a soft blue light. The library. As Leo stood guard, Emily approached the terminal. "Anya, I'm at the console," she whispered. "Ready when you are, Emily. The system is listening." Taking a deep breath, Emily leaned toward the microphone. The brightest stars cast the longest shadows. For a heart-stopping second, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered to life. Lines of code scrolled past at an impossible speed. Anya's voice was triumphant. "It's working. The kill switch protocol is active. It's wiping the manipulative subroutines from the Harmony system, severing its control. It's reverting to Croft's original open-source framework." Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. "Time to go," Leo yelled, pulling her away. They made it out by the skin of their teeth, melting back into the city as chaos erupted at Nexus Tower. The next morning, the world woke up different. The silence was broken. Suddenly, people could speak of Julian Croft again. His name, his work, his disappearance. It all came flooding back into the public consciousness. The Harmony system was still functional, but its oppressive control was gone. It was just a network again. The news was a firestorm. Nexus stock plummeted. Government officials faced a public demanding answers. In the midst of the chaos, an anonymous source, Emily, leaked Croft's video and the full story of the conspiracy to every news outlet on the planet. The dam had broken. Weeks later, special forces, acting on the now unstoppable public outcry, raided a black site and found him. Julian Croft was free. Emily watched his first press conference from the back of the room, just another face in the crowd. He looked thin, but his eyes burned with a renewed purpose. He didn't name her, but as he spoke about the courage it takes for one voice to speak truth to power, his gaze swept the room, and for a fleeting moment it met hers. It was a silent acknowledgement, a shared victory. Her work wasn't over. The fight for transparency and truth would continue. But as she walked out of the press conference and into the bustling city, she felt a profound sense of peace. She hadn't just broken a story. She had helped rewrite it. And in a world that had tried to enforce silence, she had given it back its voice. What do you think will happen next? Will society learn from this, or is history doomed to repeat itself? Let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. We'll see you in the next one. It was 4:32 in the morning. A sharp buzz from her encrypted phone sliced through the pre-dawn quiet. Just one message, stark and chilling. They took him. No press, no record. If you don't act, he disappears. My stomach knotted. Attached was a photo, heavily redacted, but the subject was unmistakable. Elon Musk. His hands were secured, and he looked like he'd been dragged straight from a jet hangar. The light was cold, fluorescent, unforgiving. But his expression, it wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was pure, unyielding resolve. My heart hammered against my ribs. To me, Musk was never just a billionaire, never just another tech icon. He was a symbol of that relentless, crazy pursuit of the impossible, a rebellion against the idea that we've gone as far as we can go. He represented humanity clawing its way inch by inch toward the stars. This felt personal. It reminded me of my father. He died exposing a conspiracy within a defense contractor, and his truth was buried with him. I stood at his grave and made a promise to myself. Never again. I would never let the truth be buried like that again. And now this message, this picture, it was a call to action. Who were they? The message was a ghost. No sender, no traceable origin. It was designed to be a dead end. But they made one mistake. They sent it to me. They wanted me to know, which meant they either wanted my help or they were trying to taunt me, to show me I was powerless. Either way, they had underestimated me. The redaction on the photo, it was professional but sloppy if you knew what to look for. Digital watermarks, pixel degradation patterns. It was a faint breadcrumb, but it was a start. I started running the image through my deep analysis software, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Every line of code, every algorithm I ran was fueled by that promise I made years ago. Musk had enemies, of course. legacy industries he was disrupting, political figures threatened by his influence, even factions within the government who saw his private space race as a national security risk. The list was long and dangerous, but this felt different. No press, no record. This wasn't a standard corporate takedown. This was a ghost operation. The kind of thing my father had stumbled into. The kind of thing that makes people disappear. My screen flickered, the analysis software flagging a microscopic anomaly in the redacted area of the photo. A faint partial logo. It was a long shot, but it was a lead. I pulled on my jacket, my mind already 10 steps ahead. I had a source, a disgraced data analyst who owed me a big favor. He used to work for a shadowy private intelligence firm called Aegis. If anyone knew about off-the-books operations, it was him. This wasn't just about finding Elon Musk anymore. This was about shining a light so bright that no shadow could hide. This was about confronting the faceless powers that believe they can operate above the law, that they can erase people from existence. They had chosen the wrong person to challenge. They thought they were burying a story. They didn't realize they had just dug up a ghost from the past, and she was ready for a fight. The hunt was on. Thank you so much for watching and joining me on this journey. If you're as intrigued as I am to see where this leads, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next chapter. Drop a comment below with your theories. Who do you think is behind this? Until next time, stay curious. Truth felt a cold dread creep up her spine as she stared at the screen, the static-laced image burning into her memory. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. She knew it in her bones. This wasn't just a glitch in the system or a temporary social media blackout. This was a deliberate, calculated erasure. A man as loud, as ubiquitous as Elon Musk doesn't just vanish from the global conversation. Someone had silenced him. But who? And why? Her heart hammered against her ribs. The image on her monitor, a grainy frame from a security feed she'd spent days tracking down, held the first real clue. It was a sterile, concrete room, cold and impersonal. But it was the details that made her blood run cold. She zoomed in, her breath catching in her throat. There it was, stenciled in stark black paint on the wall. 47B. A designation. A location marker. This wasn't a hotel room or a private retreat. This was a holding cell. Her eyes scanned the frame, desperate for more. And then she saw it, a shadow lurking in the corner, almost perfectly camouflaged against the darker concrete. But the lens had caught just enough. A glint of metal, the unmistakable outline of tactical gear, and a patch, small but clear enough to identify. A U.S. government insignia. This wasn't a kidnapping for ransom. This wasn't a corporate rival's dirty trick. This was a snatch and silence operation, executed with military precision by a clandestine government agency. No court order, no subpoena. Just a man, plucked from the world without a trace. A wave of adrenaline surged through her. She had to move. She grabbed her coat, her keys, her mind racing 1,000,000 miles a minute. The world was oblivious, scrolling through memes and celebrity gossip, completely unaware that one of its most influential figures had been swallowed whole by the very system meant to protect them. She burst into the newsroom, a whirlwind of righteous fury. The familiar hum of the office greeted her, screens glowing with breaking news, keyboards clattering as her colleagues chased the morning's headlines. The irony was suffocating. The world kept turning, the news cycle kept churning, the country kept talking about politics, the economy, the weather, everything and anything except the one story that truly mattered. She scanned the tickers, the trending topics, the front-page articles. Nowhere, absolutely nowhere was Elon Musk's name mentioned. It was as if someone had reached into the collective consciousness of the planet and pressed delete. A ghost, a phantom. He had ceased to exist. This was bigger than a missing person case. This was a story about power, control, and the terrifying ease with which the truth could be buried. They wanted him gone, and they wanted everyone to forget he was ever here. But they had made one critical mistake. They hadn't counted on her. They hadn't counted on the fact that truth was not just her name, it was her mission. And she would not rest until she dragged this conspiracy out of the shadows and into the light. no matter the cost. The first step was to identify that insignia. She pulled the enhanced image onto the main screen in her office, the symbol now blown up, its details more defined. It wasn't one of the common agencies, not CIA, not FBI, not NSA. It was something else, something deeper, more obscure. An eagle clutching a key instead of arrows. Below it, a Latin motto she couldn't quite make out. This was a Black Ops unit, a ghost entity operating outside the normal chain of command, a group with the authority to make people disappear. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, diving into encrypted databases and forgotten government archives she had access to from her years of investigative journalism. She cross-referenced the insignia with declassified documents, whistleblower testimonies, and whispers from her network of sources deep within the intelligence community. Hours blurred together. Coffee went cold. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across her desk. The rest of the newsroom slowly emptied out, leaving her alone with the ghosts on her screen. And then, a hit. A single heavily redacted file from a 20-year-old congressional hearing on unauthorized domestic surveillance programs. The file mentioned a Project Chimera, a highly classified initiative tasked with neutralizing technological threats to national security. And there it was, buried in a footnote, a description of their unit patch. An eagle clutching a key, symbolizing their power to unlock or lock away any information, any person, deemed a threat. The motto, now decipherable, Silentium est aureum. Silence is golden. They saw Elon Musk not as an innovator but as a threat. His work with Starlink, creating a decentralized global communication network outside of government control, his advancements in artificial intelligence, his ambitions for space exploration, it all added up to a man who could operate beyond the reach of any single nation. He was becoming too powerful, too independent. So Project Chimera did what it was created to do. They silenced him. Now she had a name. Project Chimera. It wasn't much, but it was a thread, and she was going to pull on it until the entire rotten tapestry unraveled. She knew this path was dangerous. These were people who operated in the darkest corners of the government, who answered to no one. They had erased Elon Musk. They wouldn't hesitate to do the same to a nosy journalist. But the thought of backing down never even crossed her mind. This was the story of a lifetime, the kind of story that could change the world. She packed a go bag, a burner phone, cash, a fake ID, a flash drive with all her research encrypted. She couldn't stay here. They were watching, she was sure of it. If they knew she had this image, they would be coming for her next. She sent a coded message to her most trusted contact, a reclusive former hacker known only as Oracle. The message was simple. Chimera is real. I have proof. Need a ghost. Leaving the newsroom, she felt 1,000 eyes on her back. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every passing car a potential tale. This was no longer just about reporting the news. This was about survival. She was now part of the story, a player in a deadly game against an invisible enemy. The truth was a weapon, and she was determined to wield it. The world had forgotten Elon Musk, but she would make them remember. She would make them see the monsters hiding in plain sight. Her quest for the truth had just begun, and she knew with chilling certainty that it would lead her down a rabbit hole far deeper and darker than she could ever have imagined. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is just the beginning of a much larger story we're exploring. If you're captivated by this mystery and want to see where Truth's investigation leads, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We have a lot more to uncover. Don't forget to like this video and share it to help us get the word out. See you in the next one. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a story that feels ripped straight from a Hollywood thriller, but it all starts in the mundane reality of a newsroom. Picture this. Emily, a journalist with a fire in her belly, marches up to her editor's desk. The air crackles with urgency. "Simon," she says, her voice tight, "Elon Musk has been detained illegally by the FBI. Now Simon is your classic grizzled editor. Think glasses perched on his nose, coffee stains on his shirt, and an idealism that checked out years ago, probably somewhere between a nasty lawsuit and an even nastier divorce. He just rubs his face, the picture of exhaustion. "Emily," he begins, trying to be gentle, "you sound completely insane." But Emily is unfazed. "I have proof," she insists. Simon sighs, already knowing the answer to his next question. "Has anyone else reported this?" "No," Emily shoots back, "and that's the point. They're burying it. The silence is the confirmation. It means the story is real." This is where the newsroom drama really heats up. Simon leans forward, his voice dropping to a whisper, almost a hiss. "Emily, listen to me. You've built a solid career. Don't throw it all away chasing ghosts, especially not ghosts who build rockets and have a legion of online followers." He's trying to protect her, to protect the paper. But Emily sees it differently. To her, this isn't just a story. It's a fundamental crisis. Simon, the government just disappeared arguably the most influential figure in technology. If that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. She's pleading with him to see the bigger picture, the chilling implications. "What scares me," Simon cuts in, his voice sharp and low, "is losing this paper. The FBI isn't just a headline, Emily. They're a boot that has a particular liking for necks, especially necks like ours that stick out." He's not just thinking about a story. He's thinking about survival, about the very real power that can crush a small newspaper that gets too bold. So we have this incredible standoff. On one side, Emily, driven by a conviction that the truth must be told, no matter the cost. On the other, Simon, weighed down by the practical, dangerous realities of challenging the powers that be. He's seen what happens to people who poke the hornet's nest. He's lived it. Emily tries a different approach. She pulls out a file. Not a digital one, but a physical manila folder, and slides it across his desk. "Look, I know this is a big swing, but just read it. It's not a ghost, Simon, it's a source. A credible one. Someone from the inside." Simon eyes the folder as if it's a venomous snake. He doesn't touch it. "An inside source? Emily, those are the ones that get you a nice long visit from men in dark suits. You think they won't find out who talked? You think they won't come for us? That's the risk of our job." Emily's voice rises, a mixture of frustration and passion. "Since when did we start putting our own comfort ahead of the public's right to know? This is why people don't trust us anymore, Simon, because we've become too afraid to do the actual work." Her words hang in the air. She's hit a nerve. Simon looks away, staring out the window at the city below. He remembers a younger version of himself, a journalist who would have jumped at a story like this, who believed in changing the world one headline at a time. Where did that person go? The world is different now, he says quietly, more to himself than to her. The rules have changed. No, Simon, Emily counters, her voice softening slightly. The rules haven't changed. We've just stopped playing the game. We've forfeited. If we don't report this, who will? This is bigger than Elon Musk. This is about whether a government can secretly detain any citizen, no matter how powerful, without due process. If they can do it to him, they can do it to anyone. This is the core of the dilemma. It's a classic case of journalistic integrity versus self-preservation. Emily represents the ideal, the watchdog function of the press. Simon represents the pragmatism, the scars left by a long career fighting battles and, more often than not, losing them. He finally looks back at her, and for the first time, a flicker of something other than exhaustion crosses his face. Maybe it's a spark of the old fire. "Okay," he says, his voice barely a whisper. He slowly reaches out and pulls the folder towards him. He doesn't open it, not yet. He just rests his hand on it. "Okay," he repeats, a little firmer this time. "But we do this my way, quietly, carefully. We verify everything twice, then we verify it again. We don't publish a single word until we have an ironclad case. One wrong move and we're not just wrong, we're gone." A wave of relief washes over Emily's face, but she knows this is just the beginning. The real battle is yet to come. She's won over her editor, but now they have to take on an opponent far more powerful and far more dangerous than a rival newspaper. They have to take on the shadows. This story raises so many questions about the role of the media, the limits of power, and the courage it takes to speak truth to that power. What would you do in Emily's shoes? What about in Simon's? Is he a coward? Or is he a realist? It's a fascinating moral tightrope, and the story is only just getting started. The first step has been taken. The folder is on the desk, and the consequences of opening it will be immense. Thanks so much for tuning in to explore this gripping scenario with me. If you found this as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into compelling stories. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious. Sound of a sharp, panicked breath. You're in over your head. A beat of silence, then a strained voice on the other end of a phone. They didn't just detain him, they classified him. Another beat. The character's voice is a low, urgent whisper. Why? A long, tense pause. The voice on the phone drops to a barely audible, almost fearful whisper. Project Dawn. The sound of a phone line clicking dead, a sharp intake of breath. Project Dawn. The words echoed in the sudden silence of my apartment, each syllable a lead weight settling in my chest. It wasn't just a name. It felt like a prophecy, a dark omen I couldn't shake. The screen of my phone was wiped clean. No call history. No trace of the conversation that had just shattered my world. It was as if the call, and the man I was trying to find, had never existed. But I knew better. I knew what I heard. That night, sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. My mind raced, replaying that single cryptic phrase, Project Dawn. What did it mean? I decided a drive would clear my head, but the city lights offered no comfort. Instead, they just seemed to sharpen the shadows. That's when I saw them. Headlights, too bright, too close, flaring in my rearview mirror. A black SUV, the kind with tinted windows that seemed to swallow the light. My stomach clenched. Just a coincidence, I told myself. It's a big city. I kept my eyes on the road, my hands gripping the steering wheel. But then another pair of headlights joined the first, a second black SUV. My pulse hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear. This was not a coincidence. I made a sharp right turn onto a quieter side street. My heart sank as I watched in the mirror. They turned right too. No hesitation. Just a smooth, synchronized movement. I pressed down on the accelerator, the engine whining in protest. The city streets blurred into a smear of neon and concrete, but they kept pace, closing in, boxing me in. They were hunting me. My mind scrambled for an escape. Up ahead, the familiar, comforting glow of a 24-hour gas station. It was my only chance. I wrenched the wheel, veering Excessua into the brightly lit forecourt, my tires squealing on the pavement. I slammed the car into park and killed the engine, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I watched, frozen, as the two SUVs didn't follow me in. Instead, they slowed, crawling past the entrance like sharks circling their prey. I could feel their unseen eyes on me, a cold, predatory assessment. Then, as slowly as they appeared, they accelerated and disappeared back into the night. The message was clear, delivered without a single word. Stop digging. But they didn't know me. Fear is a powerful motivator, but so is anger. They wanted me to be scared, to back down. They had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They had just shown me I was on the right track. Project Dawn wasn't just a classified file anymore, it was personal. They had taken him, and now they were coming for me. Let them come. I wasn't running anymore. The next morning, the city felt different. The usual hustle and bustle seemed like a thin veneer over something sinister. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every stranger's glance felt like a warning. I knew I couldn't go home. I couldn't go to my office. My old life was a trap. I needed a new plan, a new identity, at least for a while. I ditched my car, wiped my phone, and paid in cash for a bus ticket to a town I'd only ever seen on a map. I had to become a ghost. My first stop was a small-town library, a place so quiet and forgotten it felt safe. Using their public computers, I started my real search. Project Dawn. The initial results were nothing. solar energy initiatives, a new brand of breakfast cereal, a spiritual retreat. It was a digital haystack, but the voice on the phone hadn't been talking about cereal. Classified, he'd said. That meant I had to dig deeper, past the public-facing internet into the places they didn't want anyone to see. I started cross-referencing declassified government projects, looking for similar code names, for patterns in spending, for redacted reports from the same time period. Days blurred into a caffeine-fueled haze of encrypted files and dead-end search queries. I learned to live on vending machine snacks and the kindness of librarians who probably thought I was a grad student working on a very stressful thesis. I learned to look over my shoulder, to never sit with my back to the door, to recognize the subtle signs of surveillance. Slowly, painfully, a picture began to form. Project Dawn wasn't one thing. It was a web, a series of interconnected, off-the-books experiments. The common thread? Human enhancement. Not just physical, but cognitive. They weren't just creating super soldiers, they were trying to rewrite the very nature of human consciousness. And the man I was looking for, he wasn't just a subject. His name, his real name, was at the top of the lead research team. He wasn't a victim. He was the architect. This changed everything. Why would they classify their own lead scientist? Why would my source, who I now realized was probably a terrified subordinate, risk everything to tell me? The answer was chilling. The project had gone wrong. Horribly wrong. I found fragmented reports, heavily redacted, mentioning a containment failure. There were mentions of unforeseen side effects and aggressive cognitive divergence. They hadn't just detained him. They were trying to contain what he had become. The more I learned, the more the lines blurred. Was I trying to save an innocent man, or was I about to unleash a monster? The fear I felt in the car that night was nothing compared to the cold dread that now settled in my bones. I was in the middle of a secret war, and I had just uncovered its most dangerous weapon. The problem was, my trail of breadcrumbs was starting to lead somewhere. I found a possible location, a decommissioned research facility Shalfaja in the middle of a desert, miles from anywhere. It was officially listed as a storage site for geological samples. It was the perfect place to hide something, or someone. Getting there would be risky. Getting in? Near impossible. But I didn't have a choice. I had come too far to turn back now. I sold the last piece of jewelry I owned for a beat-up truck and a set of forged credentials. I spent hours studying a satellite layout of the facility, memorizing ventilation shafts, power grids, and security patrol routes. I was no longer just a researcher. I was becoming something else, shaped by the chase. I was becoming a hunter too. The drive into the desert was surreal. The world servisos to sand and sky, and the silence was absolute. It was a landscape that could swallow secrets whole. As I got closer, a sense of finality washed over me. This was it. Whatever Project Dawn was, whoever he had become, I was about to find out. As the sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows across the desert floor, the facility came into view. A concrete monolith against an ocean of sand. It looked less like a storage site and more like a tomb. I parked the truck in a hidden ravine and waited for the cloak of total darkness. My heart was a steady, heavy beat. The fear was still there, but it was a cold, sharp thing now. It was focus. It was resolve. They had tried to scare me away, but all they did was show me the way. Now it was time to knock on the door of Project Dawn and demand some answers. I pulled on my pack, checked my gear one last time, and started moving toward the fence, a ghost-wrong U in the desert night. The truth was in there, and I was going to drag it into the light no matter what it cost. Thanks for watching, and if you're enjoying this journey, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next one. She steadied her breath, feeling a tiny flicker of hope ignite in the darkness. It was a fragile thing, easily extinguished. Then, her phone buzzed again, a sharp vibration against her palm. An anonymous drop pin appeared on the screen. Just coordinates. No name, no message, just a location. A second later, a system warning flashed in stark red letters. You do not have clearance for this information." She stared at it, the words seeming to mock her. A dry, humorless smile touched her lips. She swallowed, the sound loud in the tense silence of her car. "Guess I do now," she whispered to the empty passenger seat. She threw the car into drive and pulled onto the highway, the city lights shrinking in her rearview mirror. For hours, she drove through the inky blackness of the night. The rhythmic flash of highway lights became a hypnotic blur, melting into the silhouettes of distant mountains and the vast, cold wilderness that stretched out on either side. This was a journey away from everything she knew, a plunge into a world where technology faded into shadow and the rules were rewritten. By the time the clock on her dashboard neared 4 a.m., the last pair of headlights had vanished behind her. It was as if civilization itself had dissolved into the rearview mirror, leaving her utterly alone. The dense forest crowded the edges of the road, its towering trees swallowing the sky, creating a canopy of near-total darkness. Ahead, there was nothing but the narrow ribbon of asphalt cutting a path into the great looming unknown. The air grew colder, seeping through the vents, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Every rustle in the trees, every snap of a twig, sounded amplified in the profound silence. Finally, she saw it. The GPS indicated she had arrived. She killed the engine, plunging her world into an even deeper quiet. A lone chain-link fence stretched across her path, topped with barbed wire that glinted faintly in the moonlight. Motion-activated cameras, like silent, unblinking eyes, were perched atop tall poles, tracking her every move. A cold wind sliced through the pines, the sound like a whispered warning, a premonition of danger. It carried a strange, low hum from deep within the earth, the thrum of immense, unseen power. She stepped out of the car, her boots crunching on the gravel. The hum was stronger now, a vibration she could feel in the soles of her feet, in the very marrow of her bones. What was this place? What secrets were buried beneath this cold, hard ground? She took a tentative step towards the gate, her heart hammering against her ribs. The air was thick with unspoken questions, with the weight of what lay hidden. She reached a hand out, her fingers just inches from the cold metal of the fence. Suddenly, a hand clamped down hard on her shoulder. She gasped, spinning around, her body tensed for a fight. A man stood there, emerging from the shadows as if he were part of them. He was tall, his face obscured by the darkness, but the intensity in his eyes was unmistakable. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that seemed to vibrate with the same energy as the ground beneath them. His grip on her shoulder was firm, not violent, but a clear, undeniable warning. She tried to pull away, but he held fast. "Who are you?" she demanded, her own voice trembling slightly but laced with defiance. He didn't answer immediately, his gaze sweeping over her, assessing. "A better question is, who are you, and who sent you?" He let go of her shoulder, but he didn't move back. He was a wall of muscle and shadow blocking her path. "That's none of your business," she retorted, trying to regain her composure. "I'm here for answers." A wry chuckle escaped him. "Answers? People who come here looking for answers usually end up with more questions. Or worse." He gestured vaguely towards the fence. "This place isn't a library. It's a tomb, for secrets." She looked from his unreadable face to the imposing fence and the humming ground. "Then what are you doing here? Are you one of them?" He shook his head slowly. "I'm the one who makes sure the secrets stay buried, and that people like you don't end up buried with them." He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "The pin you received, that was a trap. They knew you were coming. They're watching us right now." She felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. The silent cameras on the poles suddenly felt like the eyes of predators. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why help me?" He looked up at the starless black sky. "Because the person who sent you that pin also sent one to me. They wanted us to meet. They're playing a game and we're the pieces on the board." He turned his gaze back to her. "But I don't like being played. I'm guessing you don't either." He was right. Every instinct she had was screaming that this was a setup, that she had walked into something far bigger and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. The hope that had flickered earlier now felt like a distant memory, replaced by the cold, hard reality of her situation. She was trapped, a pawn in a game she didn't understand, with a mysterious guardian who might be her only ally, or her most clever enemy. "So what now?" she asked, the words hanging heavy in the air. "We can't stay here. The longer we're out in the open, the more risk we're in." He nodded, his eyes scanning the perimeter. "There's an old service tunnel about half a mile east of here. It's not on any official schematics. It's our only way in and our only way out without being seen." He started walking, not waiting to see if she would follow. "Come on, unless you'd rather wait here for the welcome party." She hesitated for only a second. Every alarm bell in her head was ringing, but what choice did she have? Going back was not an option. The anonymous message, the warning, the journey into the night, it had all led her to this exact moment. She fell into step behind him, the crunch of their feet on the gravel the only sound besides the relentless subterranean hum. The forest closed in around them, and the fence with its silent cameras disappeared into the oppressive darkness. She was following a complete stranger into an unknown tunnel, towards a source of immense power she couldn't comprehend, all while being hunted by an invisible enemy. The flicker of hope was gone, replaced by a burning resolve. She would get her answers, or she would die trying. The game was on. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the unknown. I'm so excited to see where this story takes us. If you're as intrigued as I am, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. What do you think is humming underground? And can she trust her mysterious guide? Let me know all your theories in the comments below. I read every single one. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Camera opens on a close-up of a hand gripping a pen tightly, knuckles white. The background is a blurry, dense forest. Ever feel like you're in the wrong place at the wrong time? I thought I was just following a lead, another story for the local paper. Just a simple missing person case in the deep woods of Northwood. But some stories, they don't want to be told. Cut to a shot of a person's feet walking through fallen leaves. The sound is crisp and loud. The forest was eerily quiet that day. Too quiet. I was looking for clues about a hiker who vanished without a trace. But instead, something found me. One moment, I was examining a strange symbol carved into a tree. The next, a shadow fell over me. Quick cut to a blurry figure stepping out from behind a tree. I spun around and my heart just stopped. Standing there was a man. Not a hiker, not a park ranger. He was dressed in full combat gear, his jaw set like concrete, and his eyes, they were completely blank, like looking into a void. "You shouldn't be here," he said. His voice was flat, no emotion, nothing. It was colder than the autumn air. My reporter instinct screamed, "Run!" but my feet were bolted to the ground. My pulse was a drumbeat against my ribs, so loud I was sure he could hear it. And then it got worse. From the tree line behind him, more figures emerged, silent, dressed exactly the same. They moved like a pack of wolves, circling their prey. I clutched the only thing I had, my digital recording pen. It felt laughably small against the threat I was facing. I had to do something, say something. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You took the wrong person." I was trying to bluff, trying to make them think I was someone important, someone who would be missed immediately. The man in front took a step closer, his boots crunching on the gravel path. The sound was like bones breaking. He looked right through me and said, "No. We took exactly who we needed." Before I could even process his words, cold steel bit into my wrists. Zip ties pulled so tight they cut off my circulation. They didn't ask questions. They didn't explain. These armed men just took me. They marched me past a hidden fence line I hadn't even noticed, deeper into the woods. There were no words, no hesitation. They moved with a chilling precision, like they had practiced this 1,000 times. I was being led away from everything I knew, a prisoner in a forest that had swallowed another person whole. And as the familiar world faded behind the trees, I realized my investigation into a missing person had just turned me into one. I wasn't just chasing a story anymore. I was living it. And the scariest part? I had no idea what the next chapter held, or if I'd even survive to tell it. The real story was just beginning. What happens when you dig too deep and uncover a truth that's meant to stay buried? Stick around for part 2 to find out what they wanted and why they took me. This is one story that needs to be told. Thanks for watching, and if you're as hooked as I am, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss what happens next. You won't believe it. The compound sprawled beneath the earth, gray concrete floodlights and a reinforced elevator shaft, descending into a darkness that swallowed sound. As the platform dropped, Emily's pulse hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden oppressive silence. They think fear will break me, she thought, a grim smile touching her lips. They don't understand. Fear wasn't a cage. It was her fuel. The descent felt like an eternity, a journey into the planet's very core. When the steel doors finally slid open with a hydraulic hiss, a wave of cold, fluorescent light flooded the small space. Before her, an underground hallway stretched like a surgical scar across the earth, sterile, white, and humming with the low thrum of unseen power. The air was frigid, smelling of ozone and disinfectant. At the far end, a massive vault-like door sat impassively, a sentinel guarding secrets too dangerous for the sunlit world. Embossed on its brushed steel surface was a seal she recognized instantly from hushed whispers and redacted files. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Black Site Operations. A shiver, not of fear but of confirmation, traced a path down her spine. So it was real. All the rumors, the conspiracy theories whispered in shadowed corners of the web. They were all true. Her escort, a silent giant in a tactical suit, stepped forward. His gloved fingers tapped a complex code onto a keypad beside the door. There was a series of clicks, a whirring of internal mechanisms, and then the vault began to move. It didn't just open. It retracted into the wall with a sigh of pressurized air, revealing not a room, but another, smaller antechamber, bathed in the same sterile light. This place was a Russian doll of security, each layer designed to crush hope. As they stepped across the threshold, the outer vault door sealed behind them with a definitive, soul-shaking boom. Trapped. There was no going back now. Another identical door stood before them. The escort repeated the process, and this one opened too. This time, the sight beyond stole her breath. It wasn't a cell. It was a vast, cavernous laboratory, buzzing with activity. Scientists in white lab coats moved with purpose between terminals, displaying complex data streams and shimmering holographic models. In the center of the cavern, suspended in a cage of crackling energy, was something impossible. An object that seemed to twist space and light around itself, a shimmering anomaly that defied physics. It pulsed with a soft, ethereal glow, and Emily could feel a strange resonance in her bones, a song only she could hear. "Welcome, Emily," a new voice said, smooth and controlled. A man in a tailored suit, his face a mask of calm authority, stepped out from behind a console. He had the look of a man who held the world as deadly as secrets and slept soundly at night. "We've been waiting for you. My name is Director Thorne." Emily met his gaze, her own unwavering. The hum from the anomaly grew stronger, a siren's call. She felt a connection to it, a strange sense of familiarity. "What is this place?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. Thorne allowed a small, predatory smile. "This, my dear, is where the rules of reality are rewritten. We call it the Nexus. And that," he gestured to the shimmering object, "is the source. We believe it's a key to another place, another dimension." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "We brought you here because our data suggests you are not just a key, but the only key." The revelation hit her not with shock, but with a sudden blinding clarity. The strange dreams, the odd abilities she'd tried so hard to suppress, the feeling of being an outsider her entire life. It all clicked into place. She wasn't broken or crazy. She was different. She was a key. "What do you want from me?" Emily asked, her mind already racing, calculating, planning. "Simple," Thorne replied, his smile widening. "We want you to open the door." He gestured towards the source, and the energy field containing it began to waver, the light within pulsing faster, brighter. "We've tried for years. Technology, brute force. Nothing works. But the source, it responds to you. It sings to you, doesn't it?" Emily didn't answer. She could feel it now. A tangible pull from the object, a whisper in her thoughts, not of words, but of images, feelings, possibilities. It showed her star-strewn vistas, alien geometries, and worlds bathed in the light of twin suns. It was beautiful, and it was terrifying. "You're making a mistake," she said, tearing her gaze away from the anomaly to lock eyes with Thorne. "You don't know what's on the other side." "Oh, but that's where you're wrong," Thorne countered, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We have a very good idea, and it's the future of humanity. All we need is for you to turn the key." He took a step back, gesturing to his scientists. "Prepare for integration." Alarms began to blare. The scientists at the console started a flurry of commands. The energy cage around the source dissipated completely, and the raw power of the anomaly flooded the room. The air crackled. The humming in Emily's bones became a roar. She felt her own energy surging to meet it, a tidal wave of power she never knew she possessed. They thought they had her trapped. They thought she was their tool, their key to be used and discarded. But as the energy of the source washed over her, merging with her own, Emily knew they had made a catastrophic error. They hadn't brought a key into their secret bunker. They had brought the apocalypse. She closed her eyes, embraced the blinding light, and for the first time she didn't just feel the power. She became it. The door was about to open, but it wouldn't be on their terms. It would be on hers. The interrogation room was colder than the hallway, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and stays there. I remember every detail. The long, sterile table, the glint of the two-way mirror on the wall, and the silent, unblinking eyes of the cameras tucked into the corners. And in the center of it all, a figure that seemed completely out of place, yet utterly in control. Elon Musk. Seeing him there in person, it was jarring. I was used to seeing him on a stage, commanding a crowd with visions of Mars and electric futures, or on a launch pad, watching his creations defy gravity. But here, in a stark, concrete holding cell, it sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. His hands were free, resting on the table. His posture was relaxed, almost casual. But his eyes, they were sharp as cut glass, scanning everything, calculating. He didn't look defeated. He didn't look scared. He looked like a grandmaster who had already played out the entire chess match in his head, 10 moves ahead of everyone else in the room. He wasn't a prisoner. He was a problem they couldn't solve. Then, his gaze lifted and met mine. For a moment, the entire room, the agents, the tension, it all melted away. It was just the two of us. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice quiet, but carrying an undeniable weight. It wasn't a warning. It was a statement of fact, a calculated variable he had already factored in. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. The professionalism I'd clung to felt like a thin shield. "You were taken," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "The world deserves to know why. They deserve to know the truth." My words hung in the air, a declaration of intent that felt both brave and foolish. Before he could respond, one of the agents gave me a rough shove, forcing me into the metal chair opposite Musk. The legs scraped against the concrete, the sound echoing in the tense silence. The head interrogator, a tall man who moved with the chilling grace of a predator, stepped forward from the shadows. He had iron gray hair and eyes like polished stone, cold and unreadable. He leaned over the table, placing his palms flat on its surface. His focus was entirely on Musk, dismissing me as if I were a piece of furniture. "Mr. Musk," he began, his voice a low rumble, "let's dispense with the pleasantries. Your unauthorized contact with the anomaly known as the Signal has compromised global security. He paused, letting the accusation settle. You're going to tell us everything you know, every transmission, every piece of data you downloaded. Musk didn't flinch. A faint, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips. He tilted his head slightly. Compromised? He repeated, the word laced with amusement. Or accelerated? He looked from the interrogator to me, a glint in his eye. You think this is about what I've learned. You think you can contain it. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that drew us all in. You're asking the wrong questions. This isn't about a signal. This is about an invitation. And you, he looked back at the stone-faced interrogator, are not on the guest list. A chill ran through me. This was bigger than a kidnapping, bigger than any government secret. This was something else entirely. And somehow I had just walked into the very center of it. What had he found? What invitation was he talking about? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more terrifying than the last. I looked at Musk, the man who wanted to take humanity to the stars, and I realized with dawning horror, maybe he had already found a way and we were all just standing in his way. This story is just beginning to unfold, and things are about to get intense. If you want to find out what the signal is and where this story goes next, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss part 2. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Scene opens in a stark white interrogation room. A man in a sharp suit, the interrogator, stands over a seated man, Musk. Another woman, Emily Carter, stands defiantly nearby. Miss Carter, you are trespassing in a classified facility. You will remain silent. Emily's jaw tightened, her eyes locking with the interrogator's. You abducted a private citizen without charge. That's called kidnapping. The interrogator didn't even flinch. He dismissed her completely, his focus shifting back to the man seated at the metal table. Ready to answer now? Musk, looking as relaxed as if he were in his own boardroom, leaned back in his chair. A faint, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips. He was the calm before a hurricane. You already know the answer. Slam. The interrogator dropped a massive file onto the table, the impact echoing in the sterile room. The cover was stark white, save for the bold red letters stamped across it. Top secret. Project Dawn, he growled, his voice low and dangerous. What is it? And why did you build it without a single shred of government authorization? The air seemed to vanish from the room. Emily felt her own breath catch in her throat. So the whispers, the rumors, they were real. Musk's gaze drifted from the file to the interrogator, his expression unreadable. He began to speak, his words slow and deliberate, each one chosen with the precision of a master surgeon. It's humanity's insurance policy. The interrogator's lips pressed into a thin, angry line. He leaned forward, his knuckles white on the tabletop. An insurance policy? Against what? A flicker. Musk's eyes darted toward the one-way mirror, a silent acknowledgement to whoever was watching on the other side. Then his gaze returned to the agent, a glint of something profound, something almost sorrowful in their depths. Against you, the interrogator recoiled as if struck. Against us? The government sworn to protect this nation? You misunderstand, Musk continued, his voice still unnervingly calm. Not just you. Against all governments. Against the very systems we've built. The ones that prioritize power over progress, borders over brotherhood. He gestured vaguely at the file. Project Dawn is not a weapon. It's an escape hatch. Emily's mind raced, trying to piece it together. An escape hatch? To where? The interrogator scoffed, a bitter, disbelieving sound. Escape from what? Your tax obligations? International law? From inevitability, Musk said softly. Look at our world. We're teetering on a dozen different brinks. Environmental, political, societal. We treat the symptoms, but we never cure the disease. The disease is our own nature. We build, we innovate, but we also consume and destroy. Project Dawn is the acknowledgement of that fundamental flaw. He leaned forward, mirroring the interrogator, the intensity finally breaking through his calm facade. You want to know what it is? It's a vessel. A new beginning. A chance to start over somewhere far from the mistakes we are doomed to repeat here. Somewhere else? Emily whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. Musk turned his head slightly, finally acknowledging her presence. Precisely, Miss Carter. When this world's insurance policy is finally cashed in, the payout isn't money. It's a future. The interrogator stared, momentarily speechless, a mix of fury and dawning comprehension on his face. The secret wasn't a weapon to be controlled. It was a judgment on everything he represented. He looked from Musk's unyielding face to the top-secret file, as if seeing its contents for the first time not as a threat but as a prophecy. You can't do that, the interrogator finally managed, his voice barely a whisper. You can't just abandon us. A sad smile touched Musk's lips. I'm not abandoning you, he said, his gaze once again finding the hidden camera. I'm inviting you. The real question is, when the time comes, will you be ready to accept the invitation? The room fell into a heavy silence, the weight of his words hanging in the air. A promise and a warning all in one. The game had changed. This wasn't an interrogation anymore. It was an offer. What do you think happens next? Does humanity deserve a second chance, or are we destined to repeat our mistakes no matter where we go? Let me know your theories down in the comments. This story is just getting started, so if you want to see where Project Dawn leads, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter. His eyes flashed with something, anger or fear. Then Musk spoke softly, his voice barely a whisper, but carrying the weight of a dying star. She won't walk away. You don't know her. The interrogator, a man whose face seemed carved from granite and impatience, glared from across the sterile metal table. The single light bulb overhead hummed, casting long dancing shadows that made the small room feel like a cage. And you don't know what Project Dawn really is. A flicker of change in Musk's expression. The carefully constructed mask of indifference cracked, revealing the first true sign of concern. What are you implying? His question was sharp, a surgeon's scalpel probing for the truth. The agent leaned in, the polished metal of the table reflecting his grim features. His voice dropped, a conspiratorial whisper that sent a shiver down Emily's spine as she watched from the observation room's one-way mirror. You think you were the only one planning for humanity's future? Emily's stomach dropped. The hum of the ventilation system seemed to roar in her ears, and a cold, creeping realization spread through her veins like ice. They weren't trying to stop Project Dawn. They weren't trying to dismantle the ark he had built for humanity. They were interrogating him because they wanted the keys, they wanted control. Back in the interrogation room, Musk exhaled, a slow, heavy sound of profound disappointment. It was the sound of a man watching his greatest creation being twisted into a weapon. Then you're already lost. The agent's hand twitched, a reflexive, predatory movement toward the holstered weapon at his side. A threat hung in the air, thick and suffocating. But Musk wasn't looking at the agent anymore. His gaze seemed to pierce through the mirrored glass, finding Emily, finding the hope he had placed in her. His expression softened, just for a second. It was a silent message, an entire plan conveyed in a single look. It's up to you now. Emily knew what she had to do. She turned from the window, her own fear solidifying into cold, hard resolve. They thought they had him cornered. They thought they were in control. But Musk had always been 10 steps ahead. He had a contingency for everything, and that contingency was her. She slipped out of the observation deck, her footsteps silent in the dimly lit corridor. Every camera she passed, she knew its blind spot. Every guard patrol route she had memorized. Musk had taught her well. He had prepared her for this exact moment, for the day when his vision would be threatened not by disaster, but by greed. Her objective was the central server room, the very heart of the facility. Inside was the override. Not to destroy Project Dawn, but to initiate its true protocol, the one only she and Musk knew about. The real Dawn. The interrogator was a distraction, a pawn in a game he didn't even know he was playing. While he was busy trying to pry secrets from a man who had already given them away, the real work was being done. Emily swiped a stolen key card, the door to the server room hissing open. The air inside was cold, filled with the quiet symphony of a million processing units working in unison. This was the brain of the operation, and she was about to give it a new command. Her fingers flew across the holographic keyboard, lines of code scrolling past her eyes. She wasn't just a pilot, an astronaut. She was the failsafe. Musk had entrusted her with the ultimate responsibility. A silent alarm probably tripped somewhere in the facility, but it was too late. The sequence was initiated. A new countdown appeared on the main screen. Not for a launch, but for a system-wide data transfer. Project Dawn wasn't a ship to be piloted. It was knowledge. It was the culmination of all human art, science, and history, ready to be broadcast, to be given freely to the universe, not hoarded by a few desperate men in a concrete bunker. The agent in the interrogation room would soon realize his mistake. The monitors would go blank, the power would surge, and he would understand that the prize he was trying to seize had just slipped through his fingers, becoming as intangible as starlight. Back in the interrogation room, Musk would probably smile, a genuine, knowing smile. He had known they would come for his project. He had also known they would underestimate the woman he had chosen to protect it. Emily watched the progress bar fill. 100%. The transfer was complete. Project Dawn was now free, a ghost in the machine, a message in a bottle cast into the cosmic ocean. She took a deep breath. Her part was done. Now for the escape. Musk had a plan for that too. He always did. He wasn't just building a future for humanity. He was ensuring it would arrive. And it wouldn't be commandeered. She felt a surge of gratitude for the man who had trusted her so completely. He had seen the future, and he had made sure it belonged to everyone. Thank you so much for watching. This story was a blast to create, and if you enjoyed this journey into the world of Project Dawn, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Let me know in the comments what you think happens to Emily next. Until next time, stay curious. Musk looked at her, a profound realization slowly dawning across his features. His voice was a mix of awe and disbelief. You didn't come here just for answers, did you? Emily leaned in, her whisper a ghost in the sterile room, yet carrying the weight of billions. The world is watching. In that moment, a flicker of hope ignited between them, faint, fragile, but undeniably alive. It was a shared secret, a spark in the overwhelming darkness. But the moment was shattered. Secure Musk, isolate the journalist, the interrogator barked, his voice slicing through the air like a whip. Two agents, their movements efficient and brutal, grabbed Emily's arms. The grip was ironclad, but she wasn't done. Twisting with a surge of adrenaline that sharpened her focus, she fought back. Pain burned through her shoulders, a fire she ignored. She drove her foot back, kicking one of the agents square in the shin. He staggered forward, crashing into the metal table with a grunt of pain. Papers filled with secrets and lies flew into the air like startled birds. That was her chance. She lunged for the door, the promise of escape just a few feet away, but a cold metallic click echoed behind her, stopping her dead. The sound of a gun being cocked. Stop, the interrogator warned. His voice was low, devoid of emotion, which made it all the more dangerous. Emily froze, her hand hovering inches from the door handle. Her chest rose and fell with ragged, desperate breaths. She could feel the barrel of the gun aimed at her back, a cold point of pressure even from a distance. This is bigger than you can possibly imagine, he said, his tone a chilling mix of condescension and threat. Walk away now before you destroy everything. Slowly, deliberately, Emily turned to face him. Her fear was a live thing, coiling in her stomach, but her voice was steady when she spoke. She met his cold gaze without flinching. Everything? Or just your control? The question hung in the air, a direct challenge. It wasn't just about an interview anymore. It was about tearing down the walls he had so carefully constructed. The interrogator's lips thinned into a hard line. He gestured with the gun towards a chair. Sit. Down. You want to know what this is about? Fine. Let's talk about what happens when humanity plays with fire it doesn't understand. Musk, who had been watching this entire exchange with a guarded expression, finally spoke up. She has a right to know. The public has a right to know. That was always the point. The point, the interrogator sneered, not taking his eyes off Emily, was to advance our species, not to invite panic and chaos by revealing every single step of the process to people who can't grasp the scale of it. You, of all people, should understand that. He took a step closer to Emily, lowering the gun, but not his guard. You think you're a hero, don't you? Uncovering the truth for the little guy. But what if the truth is a bomb? Are you prepared to be the one who lights the fuse? Emily's mind raced. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to find a way out. But the journalist in her, the part that had driven her this far, was captivated. This was it. This was the story. The one that could change everything. I'm prepared to report what's real, she countered. Whatever the consequences. People aren't as fragile as you think. They're just tired of being lied to. A grim smile touched the interrogator's lips. Oh, you have no idea, he said softly. He pulled a small, sleek tablet from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table toward her. On the screen was a single, swirling image of a galaxy she didn't recognize, pulsing with an unnatural light. That's not a simulation. That's a live feed. And it's getting closer. Now, tell me again how you plan to report on that without causing the end of the world as we know it. The room fell silent. The faint hum of the building's ventilation system was the only sound. Emily stared at the image on the tablet, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The swirling colors were mesmerizingly beautiful, yet terrifyingly alien. This was what Musk had been working on. This was the secret they were willing to kill to protect. Musk's voice was strained. We made contact. It wasn't intentional at first, an anomaly in the deep space telemetry, but it responded to our signals. It learned. It's a threat, the interrogator cut in, his voice sharp. A potential extinction-level event. We are trying to manage it, to understand it before it understands us too well. Your little crusade for truth threatens to alert it to our precise location, our vulnerabilities. You would be ringing the dinner bell for a predator you can't even comprehend. Emily dragged her eyes away from the screen, looking from the interrogator's hard, determined face to Musk's, which was etched with a mixture of genius and profound regret. She finally understood. This wasn't about corporate secrets or technological breakthroughs. It was about survival. But whose version of survival was the right one? The controlled, sanitized silence of the few, or the chaotic, unpredictable will of the many? So you keep the world in the dark, Emily stated, her voice regaining its strength. You decide who lives and who dies, who knows and who remains ignorant. That's not protection. That's tyranny. The interrogator laughed, a short, bitter sound. Call it what you will. I call it leadership. Something you journalists know nothing about. He motioned to the agents who had recovered and were now standing by the door, blocking her only escape route. The choice is yours, Miss Vance. Join us and help us manage this crisis from the inside. We can use your skills, or become a liability, and liabilities are removed. The air crackled with tension. Musk watched her, his expression unreadable. He had brought her into this, but now he was just as much a prisoner as she was. The hope that had flickered between them moments ago now seemed like a distant memory. This was a new reality, one defined by an impossible choice. Emily took a deep breath, her mind a whirlwind of ethics, fear, and a stubborn refusal to be silenced. She looked at the tablet, then at the interrogator. The fate of the world wasn't just being watched. It was resting on her next words. You're wrong about one thing, she said, her voice clear and unwavering. I'm not a liability. I'm the one thing you can't control. A witness. Before the interrogator could react, she slammed her hand down on the table, not in surrender but with purpose. Her fingers found what they were looking for, a heavy-duty stylus pen left from the scattered papers. In one fluid motion, she grabbed it and lunged, not for the door but for the main control panel on the wall that Musk had been gesturing towards earlier. It was a desperate, insane gamble. Sparks flew as she jammed the metal tip into a critical junction. Alarms blared, red lights strobed across the room, and a heavy security door began to descend over the main exit. She had just trapped them all in. The interrogator stared in disbelief, his carefully controlled world now in chaos. Emily stood panting, the pen still clutched in her hand. "Now," she said, a wild look in her eyes. "Nobody's going anywhere. Let's really talk." The game had just changed, and she was no longer a pawn. She was a player, and she was ready to see it through to the very end. Thank you so much for joining me on this chapter of the story. What do you think Emily should do next? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this and want to find out what happens, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part. We'll see you in the next video. Before he could draw, a thunderous boom shook the room, so powerful it felt like the world was cracking open. Dust rained down from the ceiling, a gritty mist that caught the erratic strobing of the emergency lights. Everything flickered, plunging the interrogation room into a terrifying sequence of light and shadow. Someone, or something, was breaching the facility. Emily's hands flew to the table, her knuckles white as she steadied herself against the violent vibrations. She looked up, her heart hammering against her ribs. "What's happening?" she yelled over the rising cacophony. Musk's usually composed expression hardened into something forged from steel and certainty. "They tried to contain a future that was never meant to be centralized," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos with chilling clarity. "The system is correcting itself." Outside the room, the world devolved into pandemonium. Footsteps, heavy and frantic, thundered down the hallway. Shouts echoed, sharp and desperate. Then came the unmistakable percussive retort of gunfire. The interrogator, his face a mask of disbelief and fury, let out a string of curses and rushed for the exit, his composure shattered. The guards followed without a moment's hesitation, their duty pulling them into the heart of the storm. And just like that, they were gone. Leaving Emily and Musk briefly, strangely alone in the eye of the hurricane. The air was thick with tension, dust, and the smell of ozone. She turned to him, her voice barely a whisper, trembling with a terrifying question. "Is this your doing?" Musk slowly shook his head, a gesture not of denial but of correction. "Not mine," he replied, his gaze locking onto hers. "Humanity's. Ideas don't belong to individuals, Emily. Once they exist, they spread. They take on a life of their own, like a virus, like a fire." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes burning with an intensity that was almost fierce, a prophet witnessing his own scripture come to life. Project Dawn was never just a device. It wasn't a piece of hardware they could lock in a box and guard. He paused, letting the weight of his next words settle in the chaotic silence. "It's a movement." The emergency lights bathed his face in a stark, revealing glow. In that moment, Emily understood. The breach wasn't just a physical attack, it was a philosophical one. The idea he had planted, the future he had envisioned, was no longer his. It had taken root in the minds of countless others, and now they were coming to claim it. The walls of the facility were not just concrete and steel. They were the last vestiges of an old world order trying to hold back an unstoppable tide. The sounds of the battle outside grew louder, closer. It was a symphony of destruction and rebirth. The interrogator had asked what Project Dawn was. Musk had tried to explain, but some things cannot be understood through words. They must be witnessed. They must be felt. This chaos, this violent, beautiful eruption, this was Project Dawn. It was the messy, unpredictable, and powerful process of change. Emily stared at Musk, no longer seeing a prisoner, but a catalyst. He hadn't built a bomb. He had lit a fuse that stretched across the world, and it had finally reached its destination. The foundation of their world was crumbling, not from an external force, but from an internal one. An idea had become an army. The door to the interrogation room suddenly burst open, but it wasn't a guard who stood there. It was a figure clad in tactical gear, their face obscured by a helmet. They didn't raise a weapon. They simply nodded at Musk. It was a gesture of respect, of allegiance. The revolution had arrived at his door. Musk gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod back. He looked at Emily one last time, his expression unreadable. "The future," he said softly, "is decentralized." And with that he stood up and walked calmly toward the door, toward the chaos, toward the new world he had set in motion, leaving Emily alone to grapple with the terrifying and exhilarating truth of what she had just witnessed. The dawn was breaking. Thank you so much for watching and diving into this story with us. If you enjoyed this narrative, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter. Let us know what you think will happen next in the comments below. We'll see you in the next video. The truth hit me like a tidal wave, a sudden cold shock that stole the air from my lungs. I'd been chasing shadows, imagining some new weapon, some piece of forbidden tech. But it wasn't any of that. Before me wasn't a device, it was a philosophy, a blueprint, a sprawling, decentralized plan designed to safeguard human freedom. Not just here, but across nations, across political systems, across the vast emptiness of space. My voice was a choked whisper, filled with a dawning awe that bordered on terror. You started a revolution." He didn't get a chance to answer. The world dissolved into chaos. The reinforced door of the server room didn't just open, it exploded inward. A deafening roar, a shower of metal and sparks. And then thick, acrid smoke billowed into the sterile space, instantly obscuring everything. Through the haze, shadows materialized, growing into the solid forms of heavily armed tactical teams. They swarmed the room with practiced, terrifying efficiency. Weapons raised, their movements precise and coordinated. But as the smoke began to thin, my confusion deepened. These weren't FBI agents. The insignia on their black uniforms was unfamiliar, a global emblem I'd only seen in newsreels. A United Nations task force. The leader of the unit stepped through the mangled doorway, their movements calm and authoritative amidst the controlled chaos. The polarized visor of their helmet retracted with a soft hiss, revealing a woman's face. She was calm, her expression stern, her eyes resolute as they fixed on us. Her voice, when she spoke, was American, but it carried the weight of international authority. "Mr. Musk, Ms. Carter." It wasn't a question. "We are securing this facility. You're coming with us." My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat a frantic drum against the sudden ringing silence. The air was thick with the smell of burnt electronics and something metallic. My reporter's instincts fought against the pure, primal fear. I found my voice, though it was shaky. "Are we under arrest?" The commander's gaze didn't waver. It was unnervingly steady. "That's a complicated question, Ms. Carter. For now, let's call it protective custody. There are forces at play you don't understand. Forces that have been activated by what you've uncovered here today. We are not your enemy." She gestured with a gloved hand towards the exit. "But you need to move, now. The window we have to get you out of here is closing." She looked at Musk, her expression hardening slightly. "And you, sir, have a great deal of explaining to do." Before we could process, her team was flanking us, creating a human shield. They moved with a purpose that left no room for argument. As they hustled us out of the server farm and into a brightly lit corridor, I caught a glimpse of more UN soldiers, securing every hallway, every access point. The sheer scale of the operation was staggering. This wasn't just a raid, it was a full-scale takeover. My mind was racing, trying to piece it all together. A revolution, a UN task force, protective custody. The commander's words echoed in my head. Forces you don't understand. It was clear we had stumbled into the middle of a silent war, and the blueprint wasn't just a plan anymore. It was the first shot fired. As we were guided towards an armored vehicle waiting outside, I had the chilling realization that we hadn't just uncovered a story. We had become the story, and it was far from over. Thanks for joining me on this part of the journey. What do you think happens next? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you're hooked, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. Stay curious. Scene opens on a tense, dimly lit room. Musk is seated facing an officer. A woman, Emily, stands nearby. No, the woman's voice was firm, cutting through the tense silence. We're protecting you. I slowly rose from my chair, my mind racing to connect the dots. The sterile room, the armed guards, the sudden and forceful invitation to this meeting. None of it made sense. From who? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, yet it echoed in the chamber. The officer's eyes, which had been passive until now, hardened into chips of ice. From the people who fear a future they can't control, he stated, his words hanging in the air like a death sentence. It wasn't a threat, it was a declaration. A line had been drawn. They weren't protecting me, they were containing me. The distinction was subtle, but it was everything. My work, my vision for humanity's next chapter, had rattled cages I didn't even know existed. And now, the owners of those cages were here to remind me who held the key. Transition to a rooftop helipad at dawn. The sky is smudged with pink and orange. Mountains are visible in the distance, the sound of helicopter rotors thumping steadily. Hours later, the city was just beginning to stir below. I stood on a rooftop helipad, the crisp morning air a stark contrast to the suffocating tension of that room. Emily, the woman from before, stood beside me. She had orchestrated my release, a high-stakes gamble that could have cost her everything. Dawn was breaking over the horizon, painting the sleeping giants of the distant mountains in soft, ethereal light. The steady thump, thump, thump of the helicopter rotors was a rhythmic, reassuring heartbeat in the quiet of the new day. I finally broke the silence, my hands deep in my pockets, my gaze fixed on the unfolding spectacle of the sunrise. You risked your life, I said, the words feeling inadequate. It wasn't just her life, it was her career, her future. She'd thrown it all on the line for me, for an idea. So did you, she replied, her voice steady, her eyes meeting mine without a hint of regret. And she was right. Every project, every launch, every boundary I pushed was a risk. But this was different. This was personal. This was a direct challenge to the established order. I let out a long breath. It wasn't the sigh of defeat, but of a deep, bone-aching weariness. The kind you feel after a battle you didn't even know you were fighting. Power doesn't like competition, I murmured, more to myself than to her. The old guards, the gatekeepers of progress, they were comfortable. They liked the world exactly as it was because they had built it to serve them. But humanity can't afford gatekeepers anymore. We are on the precipice of a new age, an era of unprecedented technological and societal evolution. To let fear and control stifle that potential would be the greatest tragedy of our time. Emily studied me, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. Project Dawn, she began, her voice soft, almost hesitant. Is it really just a safeguard? The question hung between us, as vast as the sky opening up before us. A safeguard. That's what we called it. A contingency plan. A way to ensure the continuity of human knowledge and culture, independent of any single government or corporation. A digital ark, floating in a sea of data, waiting for a storm we all hoped would never come. But was that all it was? I turned my head, looking directly at the rising sun. The light burst over the mountain peaks, a brilliant, blinding white gold, and it caught my eyes. In that fleeting moment, I knew she saw something there, a reflection of the fire I felt inside. Not just hope, not just determination, but something more primal. The fierce, unyielding will to build a new world, even if it meant burning the old one down. The future wasn't something to be feared or controlled. It was something to be created. And Project Dawn wasn't just a safeguard. It was the first brick in that new creation. Thank you so much for joining me on this part of the story. It's a journey I'm incredibly passionate about sharing. If you're captivated by what the future holds and want to see where this path leads, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're just getting started. Somber, atmospheric music begins, subtly building tension. Have you ever looked up at the stars and wondered, are we alone? What if the answer wasn't about finding life out there, but about sending our own? What if the end of everything we know was actually a beginning? Imagine this scene. Two people, the weight of the world on their shoulders. A conversation unfolds, not with shouting or panic, but with a quiet, chilling gravity. It's also a beginning, one says, his voice low and resonant. The words hang in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Not just for Earth. Your heart would stop, right? Just like hers did. You mean? She asks, the question almost too big to voice. He confirms her deepest fear and her most desperate hope in a single phrase. A contingency plan. A way to ensure humanity survives, even if Earth doesn't. An ark. The word itself is ancient, biblical, a vessel to carry life through a cataclysm. But he hints at something even grander, a faint smile touching his lips, a smile that holds both the immense burden of this secret and a flicker of hope. Maybe more than one. Think about that for a second. Multiple arks, flotillas of human survival, cast out into the cosmic ocean, each carrying a fragment of our species, our culture, our history. It's a staggering concept, one that redefines our place in the universe. We wouldn't just be visitors to the stars, we would be refugees, pioneers, the last embers of a dying fire, hoping to find a new hearth. But then, the conversation takes an even darker, more philosophical turn. A silence settles between them, heavier than any truth they've shared. He turns to her, the man holding the keys to our future, and poses a question that cuts deeper than any asteroid or solar flare could. They interrogated me about saving humanity, he reveals. What they didn't ask is whether humanity deserves saving. Let that sink in. After everything we've done to each other, to our planet, do we deserve a second chance? Do we deserve to export our flaws and our conflicts to a new world? It's a question that forces us to look inward, to confront the very nature of who we are. Are we a species worth preserving? She has to know his answer. And your answer? She whispers, her voice barely audible over the growing hum of helicopter engines, a sound that signals the end of their time, the end of the world as they know it. His eyes meet hers, and in them, there is no doubt, no hesitation. They are steady, unyielding, filled with a conviction that could move mountains, or in this case, worlds. It depends, he says, his voice a steady anchor in the coming storm, on who stands up when the world turns dark. And that, right there, is the heart of it all. It's not about politicians or billionaires. It's not about grand strategies or advanced technology. It's about us. It's about the everyday person. It's about you and me. It's about the choices we make when the lights go out. Who do we become when we're faced with the ultimate test? Do we descend into chaos, or do we rise to the occasion? Do we become the monsters we fear, or the heroes we need? The future of humanity, in this story and maybe in our own, doesn't rest on a single savior. It rests on the courage and compassion of individuals. It depends on who is willing to stand up, to reach out a hand, to be a light when all other lights have faded. It's a powerful, and frankly, a terrifying thought. But it's also a hopeful one, because it means the power to save us, to prove we are worthy of saving, lies within each and every one of us. 1. What do you think? Does humanity deserve to be saved? And more importantly, if the world turned dark tomorrow, who would you be? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching and exploring this idea with me. If you enjoy diving deep into these kinds of thought-provoking stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss our next journey. See you in the next video. Have you ever wondered what happens behind the closed doors of power? What if the figures we see on our screens, the ones shaping our future, are just pawns in a much larger game? Today we're diving into a story that blurs the line between headline and fiction, a story that asks, what is the price of truth? Imagine this. A secluded airfield, the air humming with the promise of a storm or perhaps a revolution. Standing on the tarmac is Emily, a journalist, a whistleblower, a single person who made a choice that could rewrite history. Before her, Elon Musk, not the billionaire CEO we know, but a man who has just been freed from a secret detention. He's about to board a private jet, a gateway to his escape or maybe his next chapter. He turns, his gaze meeting Emily's, and for a moment, the weight of everything they've been through hangs in the air between them. He doesn't offer a simple thank you. Instead, he says something that sends a shiver down your spine. Thank you, Emily, for choosing truth over comfort. Stories shape futures. Yours just changed one. Think about that. Choosing truth over comfort. It's a choice we all face, in big ways and small. For Emily, it meant risking everything. As the jet ascends, its lights disappearing into the darkening sky, Emily doesn't see a tech icon escaping. She sees something more profound, a man carrying the immense weight of tomorrow on his shoulders. A symbol of a future that was almost stolen from all of us. The roar of the engines fades into a whisper, leaving an eerie silence. In that quiet moment, her phone buzzes, slicing through the tension. It's a news notification, the one she's been waiting for, the one the world needed to see. The headline is explosive. Breaking. Anonymous files reveal secret detention of Elon Musk. Public outrage grows. Leaders demand investigation. The story is out. The spark has been lit. Her anonymous files, her truth, are now spreading like wildfire across the globe. And then something incredible happens. A hashtag begins to trend, faster than anything she's ever seen. Dawn for Humanity. It's not just a hashtag, it's a movement, a digital rallying cry. From Tokyo to Toronto, from Cape Town to Copenhagen, people are waking up. They're demanding answers, they're demanding accountability. They're demanding a new dawn for humanity, one built on transparency, not secrets. Emily looks at her screen, at the tidal wave of support, of anger, of hope. She realizes Musk was right. Stories do shape futures. And her story, a story of courage and a single difficult choice, has just given the world a chance to build a better one. She didn't just leak a file. She ignited a global conversation about the kind of world we want to live in. This story makes you think, doesn't it? What secrets are being kept from us right now? And who are the Emilys of our world, the quiet heroes working in the shadows to bring truth to light? The next time you see a headline, maybe you'll look a little closer and ask a few more questions. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the narratives that shape our world. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on Dawn for Humanity. Until next time, stay curious. It could be the loss of a job, the end of a relationship, a dream that seems to have slipped through our fingers, or just that lingering sense of being lost, of not knowing which way to turn. The air gets thin, the silence gets loud, and it feels like you're the only person awake in a sleeping world. It's in these moments that we often look for a sign, any sign, that things will change. We search the darkness for a flicker of light, a pinprick of hope in the vast, overwhelming black. It's human nature. We are creatures of light and warmth, and when we are deprived of it, we ache for its return. We tell ourselves stories of resilience. We recall moments of past strength, but sometimes, even that feels like a distant echo. The quiet of the pre-dawn hours can be the most profound, a time when doubts creep in and the battles we fight internally feel most real. But then, something remarkable happens. It doesn't happen with a crash or a bang. It's subtle, almost imperceptible at first, a shift in the quality of the darkness, a faint, pearly gray that begins to dilute the inky black at the very edge of the world. It's the first whisper of dawn, and with it, you take a breath. It feels different, doesn't it? Your chest swells, not with anxiety, but with something else. Possibility. The world, which felt so still and lifeless moments before, begins to stir. You can almost hear it waking up, the gentle hum of life returning. That is the moment. The turning point. The moment you whisper to yourself and your voice, which may have been trembling with uncertainty, is suddenly steady, unbreakable. Life is full of shadows, you might say, acknowledging the darkness you've just endured. You don't deny its existence. You don't pretend it wasn't hard. You honor the struggle, the fear, and the loneliness, because it's the contrast that gives the light its meaning. Facing the shadows makes you appreciate the dawn in a way you never could before. It's not about avoiding darkness, but about knowing, deep in your bones, that it is not the end of the story. And so, you complete the thought, the unbreakable promise you make to yourself. But the dawn always comes. It's not just a hopeful phrase, it's a law of nature. It's a truth as old as the earth itself. No matter how long the night, no matter how deep the darkness, the sun has never failed to rise. It paints the sky in colors we can only dream of. Soft pinks, fiery oranges, brilliant golds. It reveals the world piece by piece, reminding us of the beauty that was there all along, just waiting to be seen again. This is the nature of hope. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. It's that quiet inner voice that says, "Try one more time." It's that gentle warmth spreading through you as the first light touches your face, and as you stand there watching the world awaken, your perspective shifts. The problems that seem so insurmountable in the dark now appear different in the morning light. They are still there, perhaps, but they seem smaller, more manageable. You can see the path forward, a path that was hidden just hours ago. This new light doesn't magically solve everything, but it gives you what you need most: clarity, courage, and the energy to take the next step. And the next. This new beginning isn't always some grand, dramatic event. More often, it's a quiet decision, a choice to believe in the possibility of something better. Somewhere, beyond the clouds you can see, and the horizon that feels so far away, a new beginning is waiting for you. It's already there, forming, taking shape, just waiting for you to be ready to meet it. It's a future that you get to co-create, one step at a time, one choice at a time, one breath at a time. Maybe that new beginning is right here on Earth. Maybe it's a new project you've been dreaming of starting. Maybe it's about mending a relationship, or perhaps building a new and healthier one with yourself. It could be learning a new skill, moving to a new city, or simply choosing to see the world through a new lens of gratitude and wonder. Your new beginning could be as simple and as profound as choosing to be kinder to yourself, to forgive your past, and to step into your future with an open heart. Or maybe that new beginning is something grander. Maybe it's in the stars. Maybe it's about connecting to a purpose that feels bigger than yourself, about dreaming on a scale you never dared to before. It's about realizing that your potential is as limitless as the universe itself. The stars aren't just distant points of light. They are a reminder of the infinite possibilities that exist, both outside of us and within us. They remind us that we are part of something vast, ancient, and beautiful. And in that realization, we find a different kind of strength, a cosmic perspective. But whether your new beginning is grounded here on Earth or reaches for the stars, the fuel for that journey is the same. It is hope. But this isn't a passive, fragile kind of hope that just wishes for things to get better. No, this is a different breed of hope. It is a stubborn hope. It's the kind of hope that gets knocked down 7 times and stands up 8. It's the hope that clings on when everything else says to let go. It is a wild hope, untamed and free. It's the hope that dares to dream impossible dreams, that colors outside the lines, that dances in the rain. It's the creative force that sees a blank canvas not as an empty space but as a world of opportunity. It doesn't conform to expectations or limitations. It's the part of you that still believes in magic, in serendipity, in the extraordinary potential of an ordinary day. And most of all, it is an unstoppable hope. It's a force of nature, an energy that flows through you and from you. It's the deep-seated belief that no matter what, you will find a way. You will overcome, you will heal, you will grow. This hope is your birthright. It's the fire in your soul that no amount of darkness can ever truly extinguish. It might flicker, it might dim, but it is always there, waiting for a single breath of encouragement to roar back to life. Look around you. This unstoppable hope is rising. You can feel it in the air. You can see it in the light that is now flooding the world. It is rising within you, just like dawn. It is inevitable, it is powerful, and it is yours. Embrace it. Let it fill you up. Let it be the light that guides your way, today and every day. Know that you have the strength to face any shadow, because you carry the promise of the dawn within you. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If this message resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you'd like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more moments of reflection and encouragement. Remember to be kind to yourself. A new beginning is always waiting.